When I'm interested in a series of games, usually I play the newest installments in the series, and then if I like those games, I go back and I play the earlier installments. And for example, I was interested in Infidel by Richard Berg and published by GMT, but then I told myself, no, let's do things properly. This is the second game in the series. I'm going to start by playing the first game in the series, which is Man of Iron, the Rebirth of Infantry, still by Richard Berg and always by GMT. The Rebirth of Infantry, very important subtitle. This is a game that covers 6 medieval battles in which, as the subtitle announces, the infantry, thanks to good position and support of missile units, demonstrated that it could have the upper hand against cavalry that up to that time was considered to be the most powerful unit in an army. So it is a game that in a certain way has a strong thesis, it has a strong argument to make. So all the battles in this game will have a certain family resemblance because they all show a side that is going to be mainly infantry and missile units, which is in a good defending position. That side is the defender, and that is a side that usually has cavalry that will try to attack them, and usually that side will find itself at a disadvantage. And in fact, most times the attacker will lose the game. It's a game that, if you play it historically, is very unbalanced. There are ways, of course, in which you can change the scenarios. There are optional rules. You can tweak the rules here and there so you make the game more balanced. But without further ado, let's talk about the game. In this game, you do not have a series of turns and you do not have an I go, you go type of sequence. You have a series of activations that go one after the other until the game is over. The scenario book will tell you which player goes first in each battle. The player that goes first chooses any one of his leaders, leaders are these units here, and activates that leader. The leader in turn will activate all units belonging to his command, and those are the units with the matching stripe. Units in that command can all activate, whether or not they are within command range. Command range is the small number here, for this leader is a 4. In order to be within command range, a unit needs to be no farther than that number of movement points from the leader. If they are within range, they can activate and move, attack, and a lot of stuff. If they are not in range, they can still activate, but they have limitations. They cannot move adjacent to enemy units, and if they are foot units, they cannot leave enemy's zones of control. In this game, several units exert a zone of control, and that zone of control extends in the 2 axes in front of the unit that exerts zone of control. As we're speaking of this, there are also 3 main areas that surround a unit, and those are the 2 axes that are in the front, and then 2 axes that are the flanks, and then 2 axes of rear. These distinctions are important for combat purposes. Once you complete the activation of a leader and all the units associated with that leader, then you can try to activate another leader of your army. To activate another leader, you choose the leader and then you roll 1d10, and you need to roll a number which is equal to or less than the activation number of that leader. For example, for this leader here is a 3, but you wouldn't be able to activate the same leader twice in a row. However, suppose it's another leader with the same command rating, then the player rolls a 3 or less, then the player can activate that leader and all of his units. After that, he can choose another leader. At this point, he will be able to go back to this one and again rolls for activations, and you may be lucky and you may be able to activate many of your leaders in a row. So sometimes your army can really gain momentum. However, the other player can also try to steal initiative from you. To do that, before you roll to see if you're able to activate a leader or not, the other player declares what is the leader that he wants to activate, of his own army of course. He rolls, following the same procedure. If he manages to activate his leader, then the initiative goes to him. That leader is activated. And basically the same things apply to him. After he activated that leader, he can choose another one and roll for that leader. However, if the player that tries to steal initiative from you does not manage to activate his leader successfully, then the initiative goes back to you and you are allowed to activate any one leader of your army automatically without rolling. You get a free activation, and in that case, that is the only case in which you would be able to activate the same leader twice, if that a player tries to steal initiative from you and fails to do so. The main things that units can do in this game is to move and to attack. And particularly important in this game are the attack capabilities of the missile units, and longbow is one of them. I'll use longbow as an example because it is the most powerful missile unit in the game. And what really makes these units powerful is how many things can trigger fire from them. You almost had the impression anything that happens on the board will attract fire from missile units, and in particular from the longbow units. Longbow units, for example, can fire when they are activated as part of their normal activations, that is their normal attack, or they can fire when somebody moves, attacks, or charges into their frontal axis, or they can fire when somebody fires at them. So somebody is here, fires at them, they fire back. They are not going to just sit there and do nothing. So to fire with missile units, you look first at this table and you look at the modifier that will come with range. As you can see, again, longbow is the best one because it doesn't have much of a modifier even when firing at 3 axis away. Then you roll 1d10, you apply that modifier, you apply other modifiers that may apply, and you look at the appropriate column depending on the type of unit you're firing at and the state of the unit. And units can be in good order, like in this case, and then if a unit takes a hit, it becomes disordered. An important result that may be generated by an attack is that the target unit is retired, and that can be generated by a missile attack, but also by other types of attack. Units that are retired are removed from the hex where they were when the retired result occurred, and they're placed as close as possible to the standard of their army or their command. Depends on how the army is divided, and that depends, changes from scenario to scenario. Anyways, you place them as close as possible to the standard that applies, and you place a retired marker on that unit. Now that unit cannot do anything until the owning player spends an activation to activate that standard, and at that point the player is allowed to remove all of the retired markers on the units that are associated to that standard, because sometimes you will have quite a bit of units around the standard that have been sent to retirement. At that point, that activation is spent, the retired marker is removed, and that unit can activate normally, including can spend another activation to rally and go back to its normal state. And I have a little bit of mixed feelings about the retirement mechanism. I understand that the unit that is retired disgregates, so quote-unquote disappears from the board because the men are just running around, and then it quote-unquote reappears here because the men get together there waiting to be rallied. But sometimes these standards are pretty far from where the action occurred, and it's hard to escape the feeling that the unit just got teleported from one side of the board to the other. You also have another type of combat, which is shock combat, and that basically means melee, which is performed by units that are adjacent to one another. And this type of combat is very simple to execute. You roll 1d10, you apply all the modifiers that apply, you look at the specific table, and that tells you the result of the attack. However, what makes this type of combat interesting and not just a dull roll, resolve, is the fact that you really have many modifiers that you can take advantage of, and you can build your strategy around in order to maximize the modifiers that you get in an attack. You have to take, for example, into account the modifier of the defender. These 2 units are attacking this unit here, then the modifier that -2 applies, because you take into account the shock modifier of the defender only, not that of the attacker. But then other factors that count are the number of units that are attacking. The defender may be outnumbered, the attacker may be outnumbered, terrain of the defender or terrain through which the attacker is attacking counts. What units are attacking what units? Important again, because certain types of units have an advantage when attacking certain types of units, and certain types of units have a disadvantage in attacking certain units. And so you have a matrix, and you will cross-reference the type of the attacker, the type of defender, and then you find a modifier for that factor. You have modifiers based on the position of the attacker. For example, there's a bonus for attacking through a flank, or a bonus for attacking through a rear, an even sweeter bonus for attacking through a combination of different zones, for example, front and flank, or flank and rear. So there really are many things to take into account, and I really like that. That per se makes things interesting. It allows you to create strategies and really gives positioning and selection of units a meaning. At the same time, it doesn't bog down the game. Combat remains real fast, and resolution of combat is easy, and it just works very well. Another important type of attack is the charge. Charge just can be executed by certain mounted units. In order to do so, they have to be 2 or 3 axes away from their target, and they need to have a line of sight to that target. Then the owning player can declare a charge. He has to roll a die to see if the charge actually takes place, because sometimes the horses are like, no thanks, but no thanks, I'm not charging. But if you can convince the horses to comply, then you execute the charge normally, you move the unit adjacent there, and then you roll on a special table, on the charge table, which is clearly very powerful and advantageous to the attacker, just because charges are so powerful. Also, the charging player has a +2 die roll modifier, which is really good, and then, well, you just resolve that charge. However, there is another type of charge, which is the counter charge, that happens during the opponent's turn. When the opponent's units attack a mounted unit that can charge, and they can be attacking by shock combat or by missile combat, it doesn't matter. When the potentially charging unit is attacked, then the owning player can roll a die to see if the unit manages to perform a counter charge. Again, it's not sure, but if the die roll is positive, then that unit counter charges, which means that the mounted unit that was the target becomes now the attacker, and the attacker becomes now the defender, and this unit here performs a regular charge with all the positive modifiers that charges have. And I don't know, I think I like it better if there was somewhat of a difference between a counter charge which is launched from an adjacent hex and a charge that has been planned and starts from afar and gains momentum while reaching the target. I just feel that a regular charge should be a little more powerful than a counter charge, but there's not such distinction in the rules. Again, no big deal, not a big complaint, just saying. I like the system. I like it because it is easy, accessible, but at the same time it is still rich in things that you can do, tactical decisions that you have to make, things that you have to be careful against, like the range of potential charges against you and the range of missile units that may be firing against you. I like the activation system, the predictability that comes from that, and the fact that a certain side can gain momentum for a certain series of actions. The main idea of the game, this idea of the rebirth of infantry, I think it is both one of the most interesting things and a little bit of a limitation in certain cases. It's a wonderful thing because these battles will allow you to see different variations of this idea. They really show you different ways in which infantry can in fact become the dominating unit even against cavalry. At the same time, because of this, if you play all battles in a row, towards the end you may feel that, again, they really feel a little bit like one another. The family resemblance is really so strong that maybe it will make you feel a little bit tired at the end. It was severe for me because I was playing all the battles one after the other because I wanted to play them all before I put together this review. If you space them out, if you play more games between scenarios, I don't think you're gonna have a problem. I think you're going to enjoy going back to the old puzzle of how can the attacker survive or win the game against infantry that is well positioned and has awesome missile units supporting it. For all these reasons, I almost think that this game may work better as a solitaire than as a true player in general, because if you're playing it by yourself, then you do not mind if your units don't activate and that the side has momentum for a long time and you just sit there powerless and you just see that a unit smashing against yours. If you're playing both sides, then you also have the joy of being the one that is smashing stuff. Then at that point, the unbalance, the fact that one side is pretty much doomed from start, if you're playing historically, that doesn't bother you, again, because you're playing both sides. Otherwise, the system works well. I had a good time playing it, and now definitely I'm curious to see what happened in Infidel, how many things remain the same here, how many things have been changed, and I just want to try the new battles.